Usually when you read texts on like enlightenment or human mastery, they read like these totally sterile instruction
Oh,
manuals.
yeah. Like perfectly pristine blueprints.
Right. They give you this guide for becoming a perfectly calm Jedi master, just sitting on a mountaintop in total silence. And I mean, that sounds great.
In theory, sure.
Exactly, in theory. But they rarely tell you how to actually be that Jedi when you're stuck in line at the DMV, your phone is at 4% battery, the AC is completely broken, and you desperately need to use the restroom.
Right. It's the ultimate reality check. Because if your spiritual practice or, your life philosophy completely falls apart the second someone cuts you off in traffic, you don't really have a practice.
Yeah, you just have a hobby.
Exactly. Just a hobby.
So welcome to today's deep dive. If you're listening to this right now, maybe you're on your commute, maybe you're like doing the dishes, I want you to think about that gap, that massive gap between the person you want to be in theory and the chaotic, kind of messy person you actually are on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, our mission today is really exploring that specific friction. What happens when high-minded theory just completely collides with being a normal human being?
And the stack of sources we're pulling from today to do this is, I mean, it's just an architectural marvel. We've got this vast, really complex collection of manuscripts.
It's dense stuff.
Super dense. It covers concepts like mathematics and the integrated equation of life. But then sitting right next to those intense algebraic formulas is this deeply profound yet entirely ridiculous narrative. It's called the Emoji Volution Trilogy.
Which is such a fascinating juxtaposition. I mean, the text literally describes this universe as the blooper reel of enlightenment.
The blooper reel.
Right? It's as if the universe is constantly trolling us just to see if our sophisticated, high-level internal architecture can actually survive a broken line of code.
Or like a super awkward grocery store encounter.
Exactly.
So to really understand how this dynamic works, we're going to actually role play a bit. We're going to walk through 3 specific scenes from a simulation in the source material. It's called the Code Arena.
Yeah, it frames human development as like a series of video game boss battles.
Which I love. So let's just dive right into the deep end. The first threshold of any new endeavor is just starting, right? Facing the blank screen.
The hardest part.
Yeah, the text calls this the final coding exam.
Right, is the threshold of the known into the completely unknown, the moment right before you actually commit to doing the thing.
Okay, so picture the scene from the text. The main character, who is just called the Traveler, is sitting at a desk, and they are surrounded by exactly 47 empty coffee cups.
Naturally.
And they have Stack Overflow tabs open on their browser that are stacked taller than the Willis Tower.
Oh, yeah. Every programmer's nightmare.
Right. There's this rubber duck wearing tiny little glasses sitting next to the keyboard, and a single lit prayer candle. And the label on the candle just says, "Please compile."
Which, I mean, that is the universal altar of anyone who's ever tried to build something from scratch.
It really is. So the Traveler cracks their knuckles, they take a deep breath, and they say, "All right, universe, it's just me, my IDE, and crippling imposter syndrome. Let's do this."
And then the screen flickers.
Yeah, reality pixelates.
Yeah.
The Traveler gets sucked into this digital dimension the text calls the Code Iverse. It's this bizarre place where variables actually have literal feelings, functions, throw tantrums.
And semicolons are sentient beings plotting world domination.
Yes. So as a Traveler steps into this first level, the boss appears.
And it's intimidating. It's described as this giant, glitching hello world text with laser eyes that just looms over the Traveler and bellows, "Foolish human, you think you can just print me? I am the alpha and omega of code."
So the Traveler is like absolutely terrified, trembling. They timidly type system.out.println and then hello world with a question mark, and they hit enter.
And instantly, it's an absolute error message explosion.
Sirens are going off. The console is just screaming red text everywhere.
And the errors, the text lists are so brilliant. You have error, hello world is having an existential crisis.
Oh my gosh.
An error, world not founded, did you mean Earth?
Which is so funny.
And my personal favorite, error, semicolon is judging you.
Semicolon is judging you. I feel that one in my soul. So the Traveler is frantically Googling, why is Hello World roasting me? They are completely desperate, and this is where they perform the sacred ritual.
Oh yes, the great Stack Overflow summon.
Right. They open 73 new tabs. They find a mysterious user named Xcode Wizard XX. They copy their code, paste it in, add 47 random semicolons just for good luck, and scream the source code out loud.
I have no idea what I'm doing. TDOs figure out literally everything.
Yes. and miraculously it compiles.
It survived the first boss.
It's hilarious, but I want to dig into the actual mechanics of what the source is saying here, because this isn't just a joke about bad programming.
No, not at all.
The text uses this to illustrate a really deep psychological concept. It calls it the readiness trap.
Yeah, and I'm so glad we're starting here because the readiness trap is something almost everyone listening has definitely experienced.
Oh, 100%.
Think about how we usually operate in life. We wait to feel ready before we do the terrifying thing. We think we need to feel completely confident before we apply for that massive promotion.
Or before we finally end that toxic relationship.
Right, or before we publish that piece of art we've been hiding.
I am so guilty of this. I constantly tell myself I'll launch that new project as soon as I feel like a real expert. We treat confidence like it's the fuel required to start the engine.
Exactly. But the source text pulls this brilliant analogy from video game mechanics. It states it very clearly. Confidence is the loot.
Confidence is the loot. That just completely flips the paradigm.
It really does. I mean, in a video game, you don't get the boss's loot before you enter the dungeon.
Right. You don't get the magic sword and then decide if you want to fight.
Exactly. You enter the dungeon, trembling. You have no idea what you're doing. You fight the boss, you fail, your system crashes, you try again. And when you finally survive and defeat it, then the boss drops the badge of confidence.
So the confidence is the reward for surviving the action, not the prerequisite for taking it.
Precisely.
But wait, hold on. Let me push back on this a little. Because if I look closely at that scene, the traveler literally copy-pasted code from Code Wizard that they didn't even understand.
Yeah, they just match buttons.
They threw in random semicolons and it worked. Isn't that just faking it? Like, if I do that in real life, it feels like I'm wearing a tailored suit that I haven't grown into yet.
Right, the imposter syndrome kicks in.
Yeah, I might look the part, but underneath I'm just an imposter. Where is the actual mastery in just copying someone else's answers?
That's a really sharp observation. And the suit analogy is totally fair, because it does feel uncomfortable. But the source material makes a crucial distinction here. Faking it implies active deception.
Deception, okay.
Yeah, it implies you're trying to trick the universe, or your boss, into thinking you're a master when you aren't. What the traveler's doing isn't deception, it's what the text calls incremental engagement.
Incremental engagement. Walk me through that. How is that different from faking it?
Well, incremental engagement means you run the code you have, even if it's borrowed, even if it's super messy, and you do it specifically so you can get the error message.
Oh, wow.
You're trying to generate data, not perfection. The traveler didn't know why Hello World failed, but by hitting compile and getting absolutely roasted by the errors, they learned something.
So in real life, when you apply for that job you weren't perfectly qualified for, you aren't deceiving them, you're just running your code.
Exactly. And if you get rejected, that rejection is just an error message. It tells you exactly what skills you are missing so you can debug.
Okay, that is huge. So the goal of starting isn't perfect execution on the first try. The goal is just to get the system to compile so you can see where it breaks.
Yes. You enter the arena with your duct tape code, and you let the friction of reality teach you.
But that brings us to the next major hurdle, doesn't it? Because once you get past that initial fear of starting, once you beat that Hello World boss, the danger shifts.
Right. The threat is no longer failing to start. The threat is getting stuck.
Exactly. Which takes us to the second scene in the code arena. The traveler survives the start, but now they enter this danger zone of repetitive patterns. The text describes them stepping into this sprawling, glowing, green digital labyrinth.
Like the Matrix.
Very much like the Matrix. The traveler takes a left turn and this holographic sign pops up reading, "While true, print, are we there yet?"
The dreaded infinite loop.
And this booming narrator's voice echoes from the sky saying, "They were never there yet."
Which is just chilling. Every path they take leads back to the exact same question.
Right, so the traveler is running in circles, totally panicked, but then they reach into their inventory and they pull out a break statement. But it's physically shaped like a glowing, jagged ninja star.
I love the visual metaphors in this text.
They wind up and they throw it directly at the loop's core. The walls of the maze shatter and they've broken the loop.
But there's always but the dust hasn't even settled before the ground shakes.
Yeah?
A massive scaled beast rises from the rubble. It's the array index dragon. And it roars, "I am index out of bounds. Your arrays cannot contain me."
And the traveler is scrambling backward, terrified. They scream, "Wait, did I start counting from 0 or 1? Why does computer science start at 0?
And this is the twist. Suddenly, the dragon just stops. It adjusts these tiny imaginary spectacles, completely breaks character, and leans down gently.
Right, it whispers, Spuddy, your loop should be I-array.length, not I-array.length.
The equal sign is throwing it out of bounds.
And the traveler just blinks and says, oh, thanks, Dragon Buddy.
They shake hands, and the level clears.
That's so good. It is, but let's ground this, because the text connects this infinite loop maze to some very real, very deep psychological concepts. It talks about the identity handler and gives this agonizingly relatable example of the 3 a.m. Spotify loop.
Oh, man. The 3 a.m. Spotify loop. The source uses this vivid scene to show what an infinite loop looks like in actual human behavior. So it's 3:17 a.m. The traveler wakes up in a cold sweat.
Yeah.
And their brain has suddenly, for no logical reason, served up a memory of an awkward joke they made at a party in 2014 about hedgehogs.
Oh, the visceral cringe. I mean, if you are listening, you know exactly what this feels like. You're lying in bed, you're exhausted, and your brain just hands you a silver platter of your absolute worst social moments.
And it triggers a complete shame spiral, right?
Yeah.
The traveler's internal system goes haywire. So what do? They reach for the phone to try and change their internal state.
The ultimate distraction.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They open Spotify, and the algorithm, which knows their past patterns perfectly, starts playing Mr. Brightside by the Killers.
Which is like the ultimate angst anthem. And the traveler is screaming internally, no, I am a conscious being. I am enlightened. I need to shock the system.
So they try to overcorrect. They put on heavy metal. Slayer at maximum volume at 3:30 in the morning.
Which naturally leads to the neighbors texting them and the landlord threatening eviction.
Right, so they panic and overcorrect again, this time to whale sounds, which end up sounding like a foghorn. And finally, the app just glitches, freezes, and plays Mr. Brightside on loop for 8 straight hours.
It's the wild true loop made manifest in real life.
Totally. And if we look at the mechanics behind this, the source explains that we get stuck in these cognitive loops because of something called our identity handler.
The identity handler, what is that exactly?
Think of it as a piece of legacy software in your mind. It was written years ago, maybe when you were a teenager, specifically to protect you from emotional pain. So when the traveler felt that acute shame about the 2014 joke, the handler panicked. It tried to run an old script distraction, angst, wild overcorrection, just to keep the traveler safe from actually feeling the shame.
Oh, I see. So the destructive loop isn't actually a glitch at all. It's a defense mechanism working exactly as it was originally programmed. It's just severely outdated.
Precisely. It's functioning perfectly based on old parameters. And the text argues that the only way out of this is what it calls the inversion kick.
That's the ninja star, the break statement.
Yeah.
So explain the inversion kick to me. What is that action in the real world?
It's the conscious intervention to step out of what the text calls responsive one variable mode. When you're in responsive mode, you are just reacting to the loop.
Right, reacting to the shame, reacting to the neighbor's text.
Exactly. You are a victim of the momentum. The inversion kick is stepping into autonomous variable mode. You become the one who changes the loop. And you don't do this by fighting the app or playing heavy metal.
You do it by just accepting the reality of the moment and stepping outside the reaction.
Right.
But wait, how does that connect to the array index dragon? In the simulation, the dragon is roaring at me, and then it gives me a helpful debugging tip. Are you saying these dragons represent our internal defense mechanisms?
That's exactly what it's suggesting. The dragon is the boundary. It's the error code of your psyche.
Okay, let me challenge this, because in practice, this sounds nearly impossible.
How so?
Well, it is really, really hard to see the dragon as a helpful buddy giving you debugging tips when you are in a full-blown panic. Like when you're in the grocery store having a breakdown over choosing between Cheerios and Frosted Flakes, or what the text calls the Zoom call from hell.
Ah, the Zoom call from hell. That is the perfect test case for this theory.
Let's lay that scene out because it perfectly illustrates my point. The traveler is on a mundane Monday morning Zoom call with their corporate coworkers.
Just a normal status update.
Yeah, but suddenly their mind starts fragmenting. Their body fuses. They completely forget how their mouth works. Their boss notices and asks, "Hey, are you frozen?" And the traveler, trying to be deeply spiritual and authentic, blurts out, "I had a very integrating weekend."
To a screen full of confused accountants and project managers.
Right. And it gets so much worse. They follow up by saying, "My force is integrated." Very timeline-esque.
Oh, the secondhand embarrassment is real.
So when your internal system is crashing live on camera and everyone is staring at you in that horrifying, awkward silence, how do you possibly find the break statement? How is the shame of that moment a helpful dragon?
I completely understand why that feels like a paradox.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the middle of a live crash, your instinct is to fight it, to smooth it over, to pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, you want to just log off and move to a new country.
Exactly. But the text says that the inversion kick in that specific moment isn't suddenly becoming perfectly articulate and suave. You don't fight the crash. Instead, you must become the witness.
The witness. How does the witness differ from the person experiencing the crash?
The witness is the part of your metamind that simply observes the fragmentation without self-hatred.
Without self-hatred, that's the key.
Yes. During that Zoom call, the source describes the surface self as panicking. The body is frozen. The force, or energy body, has just floated away and is thinking about a deli sandwich. It's total chaos.
Right.
But the witness is sitting back, looking at this entire disaster and saying, wow, look at this complete fragmentation. Look at the sheer panic in the eyes. Isn't that fascinating?
Fascinating. Just totally detached, but not in a cold, sociopathic way. More in a curious, scientific way.
Exactly. The helpful dragon isn't telling you that the crash didn't happen. The dragon is pointing out why it happened.
Okay.
The intense shame and awkwardness from that Zoom call is giving you a crucial debugging tip. It's saying, hey, you are trying to perform your esoteric spirituality for a corporate audience that just wants a spreadsheet. Your array is out of bounds.
You are trying to integrate variables that do not belong in this function. Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right.
The pain of the awkwardness is just the system saying, index out of bounds. Stop trying to force your spiritual awakening into a Monday morning status update. It's a boundary issue.
Precisely. You learn the boundary, you thank the dragon for the tip, and you adjust your code for the next call.
Wow.
Which leads us to the ultimate test in the simulation, defending this messy, glitchy, duct-taped version of yourself to the world.
This brings us to the final level of the code arena. We've survived the loops, we've befriended the dragons. Now we have to defend our imperfect process.
The thesis defense.
Right. The arena transforms into this sterile, terrifying academic hall. The thesis defense committee materializes. And the text describes 3 professors made entirely of pure, crackling critique energy.
And they do not hold back at all.
No, they don't. Professor 1 leans forward and demands, explain your variable naming conventions. Why is this function called why-do-s this work?
And Professor 2 scowls and says, why didn't you use standard design patterns? This entire architecture is a mess.
And then Professor 3 just adjusts his glasses and asks the most devastating question. Is this entire project just Stack Overflow copy-paste?
Ouch.
So the traveler is standing at the podium. Their mouth is completely dry. Their brain literally makes the Windows XP shutdown sound.
They have absolutely nothing to say.
Nothing. They feel exposed as a complete fraud. But then, just when all seems lost, a tiny voice squeaks from their pocket. It's the rubber duck from the first level.
The prayer candle duck.
Yes. And the duck says, hey, buddy, remember why you started coding?
The ultimate pattern interrupt.
Exactly. And a flashback montage hits the traveler. The first time they ever got Hello World to work, the time they wrote a tiny, janky script to automate their grocery list, the pure, unadulterated joy of solving a puzzle with logic.
They remember the why.
Right. The traveler opens their eyes. They stand up straight. Their shirt is coffee-stained. Their hair is a mess, but they are proud. They look at the professors and they say, you know what? My code might be held together with duct tape and prayers, but it works. And every bug in the system is just a feature I haven't documented yet.
And at that moment, the arena shatters into confetti. The achievement unlocks on screen. Learn to love the chaos. They've beaten the game.
It's such a triumphant visual, but let's unpack the synthesis here. Because the text uses this exact scene to deliver its ultimate message about the Emojiverse.
Yeah, what this scene illustrates so beautifully is that true enlightenment or true mastery in any field you're pursuing isn't about perfectly smooth execution.
It's not about having pristine, highly optimized code with 0 errors.
No, it is the blooper reel. The rubber duck in that scene represents what the source calls the metamind.
The metamind. Now, that sounds a bit sci-fi. What is that in practical terms?
The metamind is that quiet underlying operating system that remembers your purpose when your surface self is panicking over performance.
Ah, okay.
Think about the professors. They represent the world's demand for perfection. And more importantly, our own internal critic demanding perfection. But the rubber duck just asks, Why are you doing this? It reconnects you to the joy of the underlying architecture. It cuts through all that noise of critique.
So it's really about embracing the mess of being human. There's this epilogue in the source where the traveler goes back to reality, opens their laptop, and writes a class called Life is Beautiful Chaos.java.
I love that part.
It shows that transformation isn't about becoming a robot who never glitches. It's about taking your messy humanity, the part of you that forgets PN numbers at the grocery store and yells at the neighbors at 3 a.m. and panics on Zoom, and taking it along for the ride.
You don't transcend your humanity. You just stop pathologizing it. You realize the glitches are just part of the operating system.
But I have to pause you here.
Okay.
Because I love the chaos. I love the duct tape coat analogy because it takes the pressure off. But if I just accept that my life is held together with duct tape and prayers, aren't I just settling for mediocrity?
That's the fear,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. If I just say, well, every bug is a feature, I'm never going to become a master programmer. I'm never going to become truly exceptional at anything. Where is the drive excellence? Where is the mastery in just accepting a messy, duct-taped life?
That is the exact tension the source material wrestles with. And it addresses your concern directly using the metaphor of scaffolding.
Scaffolding,
Right.
like in construction.
Yes. Think about a massive skyscraper being built in the middle of a city. When it's under construction, it is covered in scaffolding. Temporary metal platforms, wooden planks, netting catching debris. It looks messy. It looks chaotic.
Okay, I'm tracking.
The duct tape, the Stack Overflow copy pastes, the messy blooper reel, that is your scaffolding. You absolutely need it to build a structure. You use it to get off the ground when you have no other way up.
But you don't leave it up forever.
Precisely. If you leave the scaffolding up, you never actually finish the building. You never see the glass and the steel. Eventually, you have to look under the hood. You have to understand the true mathematics of the building's engineering so you can take the scaffolding down safely and let the structure stand on its own integrity.
Oh, wow. Okay, that connects perfectly. So the emoji verse, the blooper reel, the duct tape, that's just level 1.
Exactly.
It gets us in the game without quitting from perfectionism. But to achieve actual mastery, we have to transition from the messy arena to the actual architectural blueprint.
We have to move into the mathematics of transformation. We have to look at the load-bearing walls, which brings us to the core framework of the source text.
The mathematical architecture. To move from duct tape to mastery, we must move from the code arena to the blueprint. And the source material literally gives us a blueprint called the root square chart.
This is where the text shifts from narrative metaphors into what the author calls metamatics, the math of the metamind. And it's important we take our time here because the math is incredibly counterintuitive, but deeply profound once it clicks.
So let me break down the visual of this chart for everyone listening because it is fascinating. Picture a perfect square. In the very center of that square is one root. From that single root, extend 4 branches. From those branches grow 12 leaves. And on the periphery of the square, there are 36 fruits.
It is an exact, precise mathematical relationship.
Yeah.
And it represents how any complex behavior or capability in your life is actually built.
Right.
You don't just magically produce fruits, which represent your daily actions, your habits, or your visible results.
Fruits grow on leaves.
Yes, which are specific skills.
Mm-hmm.
And leaves grow on branches, which are the core domains of your life. And all that stems from a single root, which is your foundational identity or purpose.
But the math here is what really bent my mind. The text introduces this thing called the synthesis operator. The symbol for it looks like a plus sign inside a circle, like a circled cross.
The synthesis operator. And it's crucial to understand that this is not standard arithmetic addition. It's not multiplication either. It represents emergence.
Emergence. Okay, let's slow this down and walk through the math from the text, because if you're like me, math isn't always intuitive.
Yeah.
The text says, if each leaf is a distinct capability, you would naturally think 4 leaves make up 100% of a branch, right? Standard division. Each one is 25%. So 3 leaves should equal 75%.
Right. That's how we are taught to measure things. Additive progress.
But the text says, no, 3 leaves DO equals 75% of the total capacity. But here's the kicker. You don't need the 4th leaf. If you only have 3 leaves, how does the branch function at 100%? Where is the missing 25%?
And the answer the text provides is the overlap,
Yeah.
shared space where emergence happens.
Explain this overlap, because it feels like magic math.
Let's make it concrete. The source uses a brilliant analogy of athletes to explain emergence. Let's say you have 7 elite athletes. That's your raw material, your leaves.
Okay, 7 athletes.
If you just place them in a giant open field, super far apart from each other. They are just 7 independent people. There is no emergence. But what happens if you trap those 7 athletes in a small gymnasium together, throw a ball in the middle, and lock the doors for a week?
Oh, they're going to invent a game. They are athletes. They won't be able to help themselves. The competition and the confined space will force it.
Exactly. Now, did that specific game exist in any of the individual athletes before they walked in? No. The game emerged from the synthesis operator, from the overlap of their individual identities and skills forced into a shared constraint.
Wow.
That is what the missing 25% is. It's the spontaneous new capability that emerges when you combine your existing skills in a new environment.
That is incredibly relieving. What that tells me is that I don't have to meticulously, painfully build every single percentage point of my life. I don't need 100 separate skills to be 100% effective.
No, you don't.
If I build the right leaves, the right core competencies, the overlap between them will spontaneously generate the rest. The game will invent itself.
It's the ultimate efficiency hack of the human psyche. But to actually manage these variables, to know how to arrange the athletes in the gym, the text introduces another piece of math. It's called the position of one, or one over logic.
This is the notation layer. It's how you define your relationship to your environment at any given moment. Walk me through this. X over 1 versus 1 over X.
So think of a fraction. In 1 over logic, the number 1 represents you, your conscious will, or your executive authority. And X represents the environment, the task at hand, or even an overwhelming emotion.
Okay, so 1 is me, X is the world.
Exactly. If the equation is X over 1, which the text calls iterator first, you are in the denominator, you are the foundation holding the structure up, you are claiming executive authority over X, you are driving the car, you are enforcing your will on the situation.
So an example of X over 1 would be like when I decide I'm going to sit down and write a podcast script for 2 hours, no matter what distractions come up, no matter if my phone buzzes, no matter if I'm tired, I am imposing my will on the environment. I am the denominator.
Precisely. You are structuring the environment. But here is the danger. You cannot live your entire life in X over 1.
Because it's exhausting.
Very. If you try to constantly impose your will on every single aspect of your reality, you become rigid, you become exhausted, and eventually you burn out. The structure cracks. So you have to know how to shift the fraction to 1 over X. This is what the text calls delineator first.
So the 1 moves to the numerator. I am no longer the foundation.
Right. Now, you are granting executive authority to the environment or the moment or the other person. You are yielding. You are letting the current carry you. You are observing and adapting rather than forcing.
That connects perfectly back to the 3 a.m. Spotify loop. When the traveler finally stops trying to drown out Mr. Brightside with Slayer or whale sounds and just sits in the kitchen and lets the song play, they stop fighting the loop. They yield to it. That's shifting to 1 over X.
Exactly. And the true secret to balanced mastery, the inversion kick we talked about in the maze, is the meta ability to alternate between these two modes. Knowing exactly when to drive, which is X over 1, and when to yield, which is 1 over X.
If you've ever driven a manual transmission car, this makes perfect sense. Think about it. If you stay in first gear, which is X over 1, always driving, always controlling, high RPMs, and you try to merge onto the highway, you are going to literally blow the engine. You will burn out.
The engine cannot sustain that level of forced output.
But if you shift into neutral, which is 1 over X, completely yielding while you are driving up a steep hill, you're going to roll backward and crash.
That is a phenomenal analogy.
The metamind, the architect we are trying to become, is the driver who feels the friction of the road, listens to the engine, and knows exactly when to shift gears.
The metamind isn't the gear itself, it's the hand-on-the-stick shift. But, this raises a critical foundational issue. You can have the best mathematical formula in the world, you can know exactly how to shift gears, but if the base variables you're plugging into the equation are corrupted, the output will fail.
A classic garbage in, garbage out situation, which means we have to look at what we are actually plugging into these formulas. What are the base variables of a human life?
Right.
The source material gives us a framework for this called the 4 pillars of the foundation, the 4DP.
The text calls these 4 pillars the handler of handlers. They are the absolute bedrock of your psychological architecture. If these 4 pillars aren't solid, all the shifting and yielding and ninja stars in the world will not save you from collapsing.
Okay, let's unpack these 4 pillars slowly because they are dense. Target, truth, totally, and title. Let's start with target.
Target is about simple, brutal orientation. Where are you actually aiming? And this is vital. It is not your fantasy goal. It is what your daily behaviors are actually oriented toward.
Right, because I might tell everyone my goal is to write a novel, but if my daily orientation, my actual habit is watching 4 hours of television every night, my true target is entertainment.
Exactly.
The universe doesn't care about my stated goal. It responds to my behavioral target.
Your actions reveal your true target. Which brings us to the second pillar, truth. What do you actually believe? This is the operating system running beneath your conscious awareness.
The text spends a lot of time on dispelling limiting beliefs here. It explains that if your underlying truth is, I'm not the kind of person who deserves success, or I am fundamentally an imposter, then your target is totally irrelevant.
Yes, your internal truth will actively sabotage your target to maintain its own consistency.
It's the identity handler protecting the old code again.
Exactly. Which brings us to the third pillar, which is perhaps the most confrontational of the four. Totally.
Oh, the totally protocol from the text. I found this absolutely fascinating. This is about how much of you is actually committing to the path you've chosen. It forces you to look at your escape routes.
Right. It asks the uncomfortable question. Are you standing in the doorway with one foot still in the hallway? Are you hedging your bets so you don't get hurt if you fail?
The protocol it lays out is so concrete. It's 4 specific steps. Step 1, name the choice clearly. For example, I'm going totally in on this career change.
Okay.
Step 2, identify the hedge. My backup plan is secretly keeping my old resume updated and casually checking job boards. Step 3, close the escape route, delete the old resume. And step 4, declare it and move. You have to burn the boats.
And we have to explain why the brain requires this. If you leave an escape route open, your identity handler will always take it the moment you encounter friction. The brain is wired for safety, not for growth.
So by burning the boat, you force the brain to synthesize new solutions rather than retreating to old comfort zones.
Yes, and that leads to the fourth and final pillar.
The story you are living inside, the nouns you use to describe yourself. The source gives this beautiful, very vulnerable example of shifting a title. It talks about moving from the title, the one who has it all together, which is a very defensive, fragile title that requires constant perfection and exhausting maintenance, to a new title, the one who shows up as is.
Think about the energetic difference between those two titles. How much energy does it take to constantly defend the one who has it all together?
A ton.
You have to hide your mistakes. You have to panic over the blooper reel. It's exhausting. But the one who shows up, as is generative. It allows for the duct tape. It allows you to enter the arena without needing to be perfect.
So, target, truth, totally,
Ah.
title, the 4DP. And the text uses this incredible doorway analogy to tie this entire architectural concept together.
If we look at the bigger picture of how we handle obstacles, imagine you were trying to walk through a doorway. The doorway represents a life obstacle. It could be a hard conversation with a spouse, a massive career leap, or trying to break a bad habit. We usually just stare at the door and try to force it open with sheer willpower.
We just bang our heads against the wood hoping it breaks.
But a door does not exist in a vacuum. The door is held by a frame. The frame is held by a room. The room is part of a house. And the house is resting on a foundation. The text argues that if you can't walk through the door, you must stop fighting the door. Look at the room.
The room representing your immediate physical or emotional state.
Yes. Are you trying to write a brilliant creative proposal from a room of absolute exhaustion, scarcity, and caffeine jitters? It won't work. You have to redesign the room, you have to sleep, breathe, regulate your nervous system.
But it goes deeper. Because who built the room? The
Yeah.
handler.
Your underlying beliefs, your 4DP. You have to renovate the belief, which is truth, that built the room, which is state, that holds the frame, which is context, that holds the door, the obstacle.
Wow.
When you fix a foundation, the architecture aligns and the door simply opens on its own.
Okay, I am going to challenge this framework, and I think a lot of listeners might be feeling this exact same skepticism right now.
Let's hear it.
What if the room itself is structurally hostile? The source text talks about the terrain, or what it calls environmentistics. It lists RAPs, the people, systems, and culture surrounding us.
Yeah.
What if your family is deeply loving but incredibly risk-averse, constantly asking, is this sustainable every time you have an idea? Or what if your workplace is highly bureaucratic, rewards blind compliance, and actively punishes creative problem-solving? You can have the best 40T foundation in the world, you can burn your boats, but if the room is shooting literal arrows at you, changing your internal title isn't going to stop the arrows.
That is the harsh reality of the external terrain, and it's a very valid pushback. You cannot control the arrows. You cannot instantly rewrite a toxic corporate culture or a family dynamic. But this is exactly where the text applies its ultimate survival mechanism, the EXO formula.
The EXO formula, action plus identity. Break that down for me.
Yes, in this formula, X is the operator. It represents the mechanical action you take. O represents the narrative, the identity, the title you hold internally while taking that action. If the workplace is hostile to creativity, you don't wait for the work case to change. You redesign your internal response to the workplace.
Give me a real-world example of how EXO protects you from the arrows.
Let's say you have to send a highly innovative, slightly risky proposal to a boss you know is hypercritical and bureaucratic. That is the hostile room. If you just send the email filled with fear, desperately hoping they approve of you, that is just running X. The action without a protective identity.
You're completely vulnerable.
You will feel small, terrified, and at their mercy. But if you apply the EXO formula, you change the narrative O first. You say to yourself, I am the kind of person who creates the conditions for my own courage. I am sending this proposal because the work demands it, because it is the right solution, not because I need this specific boss's validation.
Oh, I see it. You shift the position of one. You put yourself back in the denominator, X over 1. You claim executive authority over the action itself, regardless of how the hostile terrain reacts.
Exactly. You don't fight the hostile room. You build an internal architecture, an O that can withstand the arrows. You detach your sense of worth from the external reaction, which finally brings us to the master culmination of all these sources, the grand unified theory of the text.
The integrated equation. When you combine the mathematical architecture, the inversion kick, the root square, the position of 1, with the strong foundation of the 4 pillars, you unlock the final code.
This is where everything we've discussed today crystallizes into one master formula for human achievement and transformation.
I am going to read the master formula exactly as it appears in the text. If you're listening, visualize this fraction. Achievement equals orientation, target to goal, times consistency divided by resistance.
Let's break down the physics of this equation because it perfectly maps to our lived human experience.
Okay, let's start with the numerator. The top half of the fraction. The first part is orientation, which is target to goal.
This gives you your vector, your direction. It's the active daily practice of aligning your behaviors, your target, with your desired destination, your goal. Without orientation, you're just expending massive amounts of energy in random directions. You're running on a treadmill.
Next, you multiply that orientation by consistency.
Consistency is the multiplier. This is compounding interest in human behavior. A single day of perfect orientation doesn't actually achieve much. But sustained orientation over time yields exponential transformative results.
So direction multiplied by time, that's the top half. But then the text says we must divide that entire top half by resistance.
And this is the absolute genius of the equation. Dividing by resistance acknowledges the friction of reality. It acknowledges that human growth is not a smooth, linear line.
Right.
Resistance is the hostile terrain. Resistance is the internal identity handler panicking. Resistance is the 3 a.m. Spotify loops. The mathematical reality is that the higher the resistance in the denominator, the lower the overall achievement output, even if your consistency and orientation are incredibly high.
That is such a light bulb moment. So the goal isn't just to increase consistency by gritting your teeth, waking up at 4 a.m. and pushing harder until you break. The goal is to decrease the denominator.
Yes.
To lower the internal resistance by doing the 40P foundation work.
Yeah.
By befriending the array index dragon so it stops roaring and starts giving you helpful debugging tips.
Precisely. If you lower the internal resistance, the exact same amount of effort yields massively higher achievement. But the source material notes a very specific, tragic pattern that happens when people actually start succeeding at this. It's called the pattern behind every collapse.
Yes, the integration architecture. The text describes this haunting visual of a traveler looking at a diagram of bright points of light. A light flares up brilliantly, burns intensely for a few weeks or maybe a few months, and then it flickers, dims, and dies. Collapse.
We have all seen this. Honestly, we have all lived this. It's the ambitious New Year's resolution that completely changes your life for 6 perfect weeks and then evaporates by February.
Or the new creative routine that yields one amazing project and then you never touch the tools again.
Exactly.
Why does that happen? If we ran the equation right, if we lowered the resistance and applied consistency, why does the system crash?
Because people reach what the text calls stage 5, breakthrough, and they mistakenly believe it's the end of the journey. They mistake the peak of a single mountain for the ultimate destination. They achieve the new capability, they lose the weight, they write the chapter, they have the hard conversation with their partner, and then they just stop. They fail to integrate that new breakthrough into the larger network of their life.
Going back to the math, they leave it as an isolated leaf, instead of letting the synthesis operator merge it into the whole branch. They don't let the overlap happen.
Exactly. They treat human transformation as a finite event rather than an ongoing process of integration. Which leads us to the ultimate realization of this entire deep dive. Moving from what the text calls multi-domain competence, where you are just running independent, isolated transformations, to playing the infinite game.
The infinite game, that phrase carries a lot of weight.
The text beautifully contrasts the finite game with the infinite game. In a finite game, the goal is simple: to win. The rules are fixed. The endpoint is clear. It's victory or defeat. You beat the boss, the credits roll, the game is over.
But the infinite game operates completely differently.
In the infinite game, the goal is simply to keep playing, to keep the game going. The rules evolve as you play. There is no final endpoint. Continuation itself is the point of the game. The motivation isn't a final achievement or a trophy. The motivation is growth itself.
The text has this incredible summarizing quote about this. You are not achieving mastery. You are becoming mastery itself. The transformation you undertake actually transforms you.
You become the practice.
Yeah.
You aren't just a person who uses the architecture to get things done. You become the architecture.
Okay, I have to ask one final question about this, because when I hear infinite game, I hear no final level and no endpoint. And honestly, if you're tired, that sounds exhausting.
I get that.
If there is no final victory screen where I can just put the controller down, take a breath, and be done, when do we get to rest? If my life is constantly fighting dragons, redesigning rooms, and burning boats, aren't I just going to be tired forever?
It is a very natural reaction to feel overwhelmed by the idea of infinity. But the source material answers this beautifully with the structural concept of the Roman numeral chapters.
Oh, right. In the book itself, there's a point where it stops using standard numbers like chapter 32, 33, 34, and shifts entirely to Roman numerals.
Yes. And that is highly symbolic. The numbered chapters represent a staircase. You climb them linearly, exhausting yourself step by step, trying to get to the top floor. But the Roman numeral chapters represent a spiral.
A spiral instead of a staircase.
Yes. You aren't climbing endlessly into the thin air of the stratosphere. You are walking a spiral path. You will absolutely return to the exact same struggles. You will return to the fear of starting. You will return to the infinite loops. You will return to the messy, duct-taped code. But because you are on a spiral, when you circle back to that familiar struggle, you are meeting it at a higher altitude.
You have more perspective. You've seen this view before, but now you have better tools. You know the dragon's name.
Exactly. It's not exhausting because you aren't fighting the exact same battle from scratch. You are integrating. The infinite game has seasons of massive expansion, and it has seasons of quiet consolidation. Spring and winter. It's a living system. It pulses. It's not a relentless grind at the top. It's a deepening of the self. It's not exhausting. It's alive.
It's alive. Man, what an incredible framework. Okay, let's take a breath and summarize this massive journey we've been on today. We started in the messy, chaotic code arena, fighting glitchy Hello World bosses and hiding from array dragons. We learned that confidence is the loot you get after the battle, not the prerequisite for starting.
We learned to use the inversion kick to break out of our defensive 3 a.m. Spotify loops.
Yes, and we faced the thesis defense committee and realized that the blooper reel, the duct tape, the chaos, that is the necessary scaffolding of our actual lives.
And then we transitioned into the blueprint, the deep mathematics of transformation, the synthesis operator, where emergence creates magic in the overlap.
Yeah.
We learned the importance of balancing our drive x over 1 and our yield 1 over x.
We solidified the foundation with the 4 pillars: target, truth, totally, title. We learned how to redesign our internal room instead of banging our heads against the external door. And finally, we looked at the integrated equation. We realized that lowering our internal resistance is the key to achievement, and that we aren't playing a finite game to win, but an infinite game of becoming. We are the architects of our own meaning.
We hold the controller, we write the equations, we build the rooms.
But as always, we want to leave you, the listener, with one final provocative thought, something to chew on as you go about the rest of your day. The source material poses this exact question at the end, and it has been ringing in my head since I read it.
We talked a lot about the witness. The text asks us to identify with that observer, to step back and watch the surface self panicking in the grocery store or fragmenting on the Zoom call. But if the witness is just quietly watching and the surface self is just blindly reacting and panicking, who is the one that actually decides to press play on the music? Who is the driver?
Who is actually making the choice to throw the ninja star?
That is the ultimate question of the meta-mind.
Such a powerful thought to leave on. To everyone listening, take your duct tape code, grab your rubber duck, and step into the code arena of your own life. Don't wait to feel ready. The confidence is the loot.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.